Good evening, you're watching Just the News. I'm Amita Balachandra. A trigger warning for people who are watching at this point. The first story is extremely disturbing. A 15-year-old Dalit boy passed away during treatment in Uttar Pradesh's Auraiya district after being allegedly thrashed by a teacher. Now, his teacher allegedly beat him up for making a mistake in an exam on the 7th of September. The boy's father has alleged that the teacher had assaulted his son with sticks, rods, and kicked him till he fell unconscious. Now, according to a report by NDTV, the father alleged that when he confronted the teacher, he was abused with casteist slurs. The incident then triggered violent protests. There were reports of two police vehicles being set on fire, and two others were also reportedly damaged. Three police teams have been formed to arrest the teacher. According to the police, the classroom in which the incident occurred has also been sealed. Now, the police have included sections of the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act in the FIR. Other sections include attempt to commit culpable homicide, voluntarily causing hurt, intentional insult with intent to provoke breach of the peace as well. Moving on from the story now, in other news, the Supreme Court today reserved its verdict on petitions challenging the centre's decision to grant a 10% quota to people from EWS sections in admissions and jobs. The petitioners had submitted before the Supreme Court that providing reservation on the basis of economic criteria breached the Equality Code. The union government had earlier introduced the economically weaker sections quota for those who do not fall under reservations granted for scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes, but have an annual family income of less than 8 lakh rupees. However, if the family owns more than 5 acres of agricultural land or 1,000 square feet of residential land, the person will not be eligible. This, of course, was challenged by the petitioners, and the Supreme Court has reserved its verdict. Also in the news, over 150 members of the Popular Front of India were taken into custody for allegedly having terror links during raids conducted by the NIA today. There were fresh raids because earlier over 100 of them were arrested. There were raids across 7 states. According to ANI, Union Minister of State for Home Affairs Ajay Mishra Teni said that the raids were carried out on the basis of inputs that the government had received. The ED was involved in last week's searches and have been investigating the organization's financial links on charges of instigating protests against the CAA, 2020 Northeast Delhi riots, UP's Hathras case, among others. Meanwhile, in an update on the Twitter versus the Centre case, in the ongoing battle, this is what the Twitter has informed to the Karnataka High Court. It said that 50 to 60% of the tweets that the union government wants it to be blocked are innocuous in nature. Now, Twitter submitted to the court that it has also been asked by the government to block accounts of users instead of individual tweets. The senior advocate representing Twitter said that such an action requires statutory safeguards and referred to a separate case in the Delhi High Court where the centre has said that accounts should be blocked only as a last resort. He added that blocking user accounts would constitute a violation of freedom of speech. The case is going to be heard next on the 17th of October. Now, this is what the case is all about. In April last year, the centre had asked Twitter to pull down accounts that criticized the government's handling of COVID during the second wave. The centre had criticized Twitter for not complying and said that it has lost legal immunity. Now, the Twitter had in turn filed a petition challenging the legality of a series of blocking orders, saying they, and I quote, demonstrate excessive use of powers, end quote. Also in the news, after External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar questioned the United States' decision to sell F-16 fighter jet equipment to Pakistan, the United States has responded. The State Department, I beg your pardon, spokesperson Ned Price has replied and said that the US sees its relationships with India and Pakistan independent of each other. He added that the United States sees both India and Pakistan as its partners. Mr. Jaishankar had earlier said, and I quote, "For someone to say I am doing this as it is for counter-terrorism when you are talking of an aircraft like capability of F-16, you are not fooling anybody by saying these. We think countries make their choices based on their own interest," end quote. The spokesperson then said that the United States wants to do everything it can to ensure that the relationship between India and Pakistan is as constructive as possible. Moving on now, the Yamuna River has reached the danger mark, which is 205.33 meters today, and it's likely to rise further. This comes after 3 days of continuous rainfall. According to the Delhi government, the Yamuna was flowing at 206.11 meter as of 8 a.m. this morning, well above the evacuation level. Now, the district authorities have sounded evacuation alert in nearby areas. People are being shifted to safer places, according to reports. Also, Flight Lieutenant Tejaswi Ranga Rao, Indian Air Force's first woman weapon system operator on Sukhoi 30 fighter aircraft, said pilots in the eastern sector were ready to respond to any eventuality in the area. Now, speaking to ANI about how she felt being part of operations during the ongoing standoff between India and China at the borders, she said, and I quote, "What runs through our minds is not very different during demanding times because such operations are an execution of what we practice on a daily basis," end quote. In the last 2 years, India has been engaged in a military standoff with China along the northern borders in Ladakh, due to which forces are at a heightened alert all along the line of actual control. On to politics right now. The Supreme Court has allowed the Election Commission from deciding on Maharashtra Chief Minister's Eknath Shinde's plea that his faction be recognized as the real Shiv Sena. Now, a five-judge bench headed by Justice D.Y. Chandrachud said that it would not put a stay order on proceedings of the poll body. The court also allowed the Election Commission to decide on the allotment of the bow and arrow symbol of the party. A legal battle has ensued between the two factions after the Election Commission on the 22nd of July directed Mr. Thackeray and Mr. Shinde to submit documents to prove that their faction has the support of the majority of the party members. News coming in from across the world. The biggest story is of the Iran protests. Now, at least 75 people have died, according to human rights groups, in Iran's protests after 22-year-old Mahsa Amini's death. According to the Associated Press, over 1,200 people have been arrested in the protests. In fact, protests over her death have now not just taking place in Iran but across the world as well. There are pro-government protests also being reported. To give you a bit of a context, Mahsa Amini was visiting Tehran with her family when she was arrested by morality police over her clothing. The police accused her of violating the law, requiring women to cover their hair with a hijab and their arms and legs with loose clothing. She collapsed after being taken to a detention center to be educated, and of course later she passed away. The police's version is that she passed away because of a heart attack, which the family says is not true. They say that she was perfectly healthy. Iran's president Ibrahim Raisi said Iran will, and I quote, "deal decisively with those who oppose the country's security and tranquility," end quote. Also, Canada PM Justin Trudeau has said that Canada will impose sanctions on Iranian individuals and entities, including Iran's morality police, over the death of the 22-year-old Amini, allegedly in police custody. Trudeau said, and I quote, "We've seen Iran disregarding human rights time and time again. Now we see it with the death of Mahsa Amini and the crackdown on protests," end quote. Also in the news, far-right leader Giorgia Meloni has claimed victory in Italy's election on Sunday and is set to become the country's first female prime minister. Now, the 45-year-old is the leader of the Brothers of Italy party and defeated Mario Draghi by a huge margin. Now, that brings us to the end of this bulletin. We thank you for the support that we've been getting for Just the News. Do tell us in the comment section what other content that you'd like to see on our YouTube page, and what other topics you'd like for us to pick up as well. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.